You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. I am Walt White, and it is, just like the last couple of weeks, it is very early in the morning. It's just a little after 5:30 a.m. and I'm trying to keep the streak alive. I actually kind of like being able to do the podcast in the morning. It's not so easy in terms of producing the podcast and getting it out. Generally, in the past, I was able to get the podcast posted, released by no later than noon on Tuesday. Now it's becoming a much longer and more time-consuming ordeal. Right now I'm recording the podcast. Generally I would be editing the podcast before my workday gets started. And then I would encode the video in the background as I got things done for work. And then, again, in the background, I would upload the video while I got things done for work and then put up the post. And by lunchtime, I'd have all that stuff together and I'd just sort of push it out on the internet. Now it's a big ordeal. I've got to, I'm recording where I would be editing. I'm trying to edit on the fly. Edit in between things, get the video put together and uploaded, and instead of the way I was doing it before, I'm trying to encode a higher quality video, and that takes quite a bit longer. And then after that's finished, I have to go back over with a second pass with software called Handbrake and reduce the file size so that I can get this fairly large video that runs about an hour long into YouTube-ish size, which is under something like 1.5 gigabytes or something like that. It's kind of technical and involved, but the podcast is getting done. It just takes a little bit longer. So if you're accustomed to seeing the podcast on Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, I apologize. It's getting out there. At this point, I guess it's no later than 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm able to push the podcast out. So that's kind of where we're at. I like the way this is all working, and I'm probably going to continue to record podcasts in the morning, just for convenience sake, or at least until it starts to get cold or cooler, in which case I can go back to recording in the evening without feel like I'm trapped inside of a sweatbox. But that's kind of all of the pre-news banter that I've got for you this episode. I want to try to keep this fairly brief. I've got 2 pieces of news, 2 pieces of feature content, a cigar and drink pairing, and we're going to do an off-the-cuff discussion topic because I don't know what to talk about as of right now. So let's get rolling. Actually, you know what? Before we get rolling, it wouldn't be a podcast if I wasn't reminding you about the Shooting the Breeze contest, or I don't even know what I'm calling it anymore. But at any rate, I have a signed copy of Shoot, Your Guide to Shooting and Competition by Julie Golub, which I'm giving away to one lucky winner. To enter, all you have to do is head over to WaltInPA.com. On the home page, you're going to see this giant picture up top. The first one is going to be a USPSA match. Give it a couple of seconds, that first picture will scroll out of the way, and a new picture will show up. It'll be a giant picture of Julie Golub's book, Shoot. All you have to do is click on that picture. It will kick you over to the contest page where you can read all the details on how to enter, the fine print rules, and some background information on why I selected that book and who the sponsor, Stogie Review, for providing that book, and all that good stuff. Super simple to enter. All you have to do is tell me what you did in guns today, and then come back the day after and show me what you did in guns today via a YouTube link or a link to a picture, whatever you choose. And you can get as many entries in by the end of the month as you like, as few or as many, one per day kind of a thing. So head on over to waltinpa.com, click on the the shoot image and get your entries in. The first item up in the news this week comes from WTVM.com, looks like Channel 9 out of Georgia, and it goes on to say, Georgia Tech students push for guns on campus. A recent spike in crime on a university campus in Atlanta has renewed the debate about students being allowed to carry guns. Robert Eager and Kyle Wilkins are leading the charge to bring guns to Georgia Tech's campus with their campaign, Students for Concealed Carry. When crime picked up on campus, I took it personally, really, Eager said. If you are being threatened walking to and from your apartment when you should be concerned about your schoolwork, that's a problem, and that is something we need to work on. When asked by WTVM News Leader 9 if he felt safe, Wilkins said he currently did not. A couple of weeks ago, 3 tech students were robbed off campus. Most recently, a student asleep in a dorm behind 3 layers of campus security had a gun pointed at his head. Before, at least you knew if you got to your room, you were safe, and that's no longer the case, Eager said. In the days following that incident, waves of students and even some parents liked their Georgia Tech Students for Concealed Carry on Campus Facebook page. Look at this map, he says, highlights most of the crimes on or off campus since 2009, and signed an online petition to send Governor Nathan Deal. While some students support carrying guns on campus, others are against it. A Georgia Tech spokesperson declined an interview but said the university follows the Board of Regents policy and state law. As groups of new freshmen walk around, Eager and Wilkins said they believe criminals see tech students as easy targets, and something has to change. It gives you an element of there is a chance the student is armed and that it gives you a bit more safety on campus, Eager said. That is the end of the article, and it's kind of like a transcript of the video that goes along with it, so it's a little choppy, and not all of it kind of makes sense because of the way it bounces around. But the gist of it is there's been a rash of robberies on the Georgia Tech campus, and some people are trying to make a stand and do something about it. I talked about 3 students being robbed off campus a couple of episodes back. I wasn't aware that there was another incident since then where a student inside of a dorm, which apparently is behind 3 layers of campus security. They show a picture of the front of the dorm, and it's got this big giant revolving door with the bars and the access code. So it's one of those things where it looks like you can't get in unless you know some numbers or you know someone, to be able to get into the building. I'm not sure what lies beyond that door, whether there's like on-staff security kind of a thing, or how it all works. But whatever the case is, someone was able to bypass those 3 levels of security and put a gun to a student's head. I don't know whether it was another student or if it was just someone off the street trying to rob a student, how it worked precisely, but there was another case of robbery, and this time it wasn't off campus, it was on campus, and worse yet, in a dorm. So I can definitely see where these people are trying to make things better by allowing carry on campus. I completely agree with it. You've got adults. I understand the argument. Oh, they aren't adults. They're just partying kids and yada yada, all the drinking and this and that and the other thing. If you're responsible enough and legal enough to pass the state background check for your given state in order to be given a license or a concealed carry permit, whatever your state calls it, then as far as I'm concerned, you're grown up enough to carry the gun and use it to protect yourself in all places. I mean, I can understand why you can't carry a gun in a courtroom or federal buildings like that, but post offices, and in this case Georgia Tech, those types of places just don't make any sense. You should be permitted to carry. You should be able to. You should be permitted to protect yourself. And it's kind of like beating a dead horse. I've said it over and over again. I'm just in agreement with the Second Amendment, and I don't see where this should be a hindrance on that. The second piece of news comes courtesy of Tom from Fill Your Hands. He just happened to tweet it yesterday, and it sparked a little bit of a discussion between myself, Tom, and Ron from When the Balloon Goes Up as well. I think Miguel from Gun Free Zone was involved in it as well, discussing what went on. And this comes from WESH.com Orlando, and it is entitled, "Deputy Shoot Kill Man After Knocking on Wrong Door." Goes on to say, Lake County Sheriff's Office deputies shot and killed a man they assumed was an attempted murder suspect on Sunday. But they now know that they shot the wrong man. Excuse me. In the early morning hours, deputies knocked on 26-year-old Anthony Lee Scott's door without identifying themselves as law enforcement officers. Scott answered the door with a gun in his hand. When we knocked on the door opened and the occupant of the apartment was pointing a gun at deputies, and that's when we opened fire and killed him, Lieutenant John Harrell said. Even though the subject is not the one we were looking for, when he opened the door, he was pointing the gun at the deputy, and if you put yourself in the deputy's shoes, they were there to pick up someone who was wanted for attempted homicide. Officials said the deputies did not identify themselves because of safety reasons. Deputies thought they were confronting Jonathan Brown, a man accused of attempted murder. Brown was spotted at Blueberry Hills apartment complex, and his motorcycle was parked across the street from Andrew Scott's front door. It's just a bizarre set of circumstances. The bottom line is, you point a gun at a deputy sheriff or police office, you're going to get shot, Harrell said. Residents said the unannounced knock at the door at 1:30 a.m. may be a reason why the tragedy happened. He was the wrong guy and he got shot and killed anyway. There's fault on both sides. I think more so in the county, Ryan Perry said. I can understand why he did it, but it should have never gone down like that, Perry said. Scott's friend, Lemac Blout, said he thinks law enforcement acted too quickly. I think because his motorcycle was parked in front of Andrew's door, it wasn't safe to assume that he was where he was at. I think they should have took other precautions, said Blout. And that's kind of the end of the article. There is a page 2, but I just don't want to click on it. You get the gist of what's going on. So, just a really quick summary. I guess the police are chasing 2 attempted murder suspects. One of them lives in this Blueberry Hills apartment complex. So the guy pulls into the parking lot and he takes the first parking space he sees, which is in front of Unit 114. He gets off the motorcycle, he walks across the parking lot into his own unit. The police come by searching for him, see his motorcycle in front of Unit 114, and assume that's where he's at. So I'm guessing the deputies go to the door, guns drawn, bang on the door, and wake up the guy inside. It's 1:30 in the morning, there's someone pounding on my door. I'm not leaving my bedroom without a gun. So I can understand that point. So he gets his gun, he goes out, and I'm guessing he opens the door for the deputies without saying a word. Deputies see a gun. Whether or not he was pointing it at them, no one's ever going to know that. Whether it was just kind of in his hand when he opened the door, or if he was actually pointing it at who was out there, you know, that's unknown. We're kind of taking the deputy's word at this point in that regard. The deputies open fire 4 shots at this guy. He dies. Innocent victim dead. And after the fact, the police determined that, okay, this wasn't the attempted murder suspect we were looking at. We just killed this guy, you know, wrong place at the wrong time kind of a thing. And if you watch the news clip that goes along with this, at the end of it, the reporter says, after the police shot this guy, they go into his home and they discover drug paraphernalia. And, you know, they sort of start plastering that all over the place. So, you know, my gut reaction is, okay, they just killed the wrong guy, and now to make him, villainize this guy, now we're going to go into his house and search his stuff, and if we find anything, we'll just make that public knowledge, so that it kind of looks like we just got another bad guy off the street. It was just kind of by accident. And, you know, that whole part is kind of sickening. Whether or not that's actually what happened, I don't know. That's my impression. That's kind of my gut reaction from this whole thing. So what could he have done differently? You know, I say I would, or I think I would, get out of bed and grab my gun. That's the first thing I'm doing when someone is pounding on my front door. I'm going to go into the living room, and from that point, I'm going to shout through the door to find out who is on the other side. and I'm going to have either a phone in my hand or my wife is going to be at the ready with a phone. Depending on the answer that I receive, 911 is going to be called. If I get no answer, 911 is being called. If they scream police, 911 is being called. If it's, a family member screaming, hey, I'm locked out of my house, it's the middle of the night, whatever the case may be, okay, then the lights come on, peek out the window to verify, and then open the door. But one of the things that we were discussing on Twitter was, if the cops, if you're yelling through the door, now you've just told the police that you're home. So what happens at that case? Well, if you stay quiet, I really don't think the police are going to give you a free pass. If they want to come in, they're going to come in regardless of whether or not you're home. So you shouting through the door at least gives you a heads up. If they say that they're police, you can call 911 and sort of go from there. I think if I'm in that position and I'm the innocent guy here, I want all of that stuff recorded through the 911 dispatch. So, you kind of go from there. If they say it's police, okay, can 911 verify that with the local police department? I don't want to just let someone in that says they're police. I mean, anyone could stand on the other side of the door and say that they are anyone. And obviously people lie all the time. So, if 911 can verify it, okay, now the gun goes away, the door gets opened up, and, I kind of surrender peacefully, and then you're sort of at the mercy of the courts at that point, or the police officers that come in. If they kick down the door, at the very least, you've got it on 911 dispatch tape, and I don't know, if you're kind of proned out when they come in, shooting you in the back, that's kind of a tough one to explain. But I think there were problems throughout this whole incident, and they were sort of compounding. At 1:30 in the morning, the guy should have never opened the door. He should have done something to determine who was on the other side before he did that. I mean, what if it was a criminal? He could have still been shot. Obviously, he wasn't prepared enough. I mean, that's kind of where I think the gun wasn't pointed at anyone. I mean, think of it this way. If he's opening the door and he's got the gun pointed at who's ever on the other side of the door, he would have the upper hand, the advantage. I mean, unless the cops had guns drawn, he opened the door and the first thing they saw was a gun and they just started blasting before anything happened. I don't know. There's a whole lot of gray area in this, and the sad part is that an innocent victim was shot and killed, was murdered by police officers who assumed, based on the location of the attempted murder suspect's vehicle, that the guy inside the house was the guy that they needed, and ultimately killed an innocent bystander who was just sleeping in bed at 1:30 in the morning. Or, well, actually, we don't know if he was sleeping. But at any rate, they banged on his door at 1:30 in the morning and killed him. So, there's news item number 2, and that is going to conclude the news for this week's podcast. Featured content this week has been awesome. I've only got 2 items for you, but after the drought that I've been seeing, like last week where it was a lot of political stuff, there was some really good stuff to come out of the blogs this week. And it was really difficult not to pile it on. I wanted to stick with only 2 because of time constraints in the morning, but it would have been really easy for me to pick 3 just from one blog alone. When the Balloon Goes Up posted a handful of really good stuff this week. I stuck with the first one that I saw earlier in the week, and that is entitled "Defending a Mobile Home," which, initially when I first clicked on the link, I thought, okay, how difficult could this possibly be? It's a small unit. What? I don't quite see where the pitfalls are. And then I started reading it, and I looked at the floor plan for the actual mobile home, and you know what? Wow! After reading it and looking at a typical floor plan for a popular unit sold by Fleetwood Homes, I would not want to be in a defensive situation in this unit. And thinking about it, my grandmother when my grandmother and grandfather used to live in Philadelphia, and they would spend their weekends up in the Pocono region of Pennsylvania. And after they were both old enough to retire, they sold their home in Philadelphia and they moved into their weekend place, which was, I don't remember how big it is, maybe an acre, up in the Pocono regions, and they have a mobile home sitting on the property. And over the years, it's become less mobile, and they've put additions on it, and it's fairly involved right now. But that mobile home pretty much has the same layout. You've got your master bedroom at one end, and you've got the second bedroom at the complete opposite end of the mobile home, and in the middle is kind of where everything is. So you've got if you're looking at the mobile home sort of dead on, to the far right is the second bedroom. The front door is situated in the living room. The kitchen is to the left of the living room, and then the master bedroom is at the far left end. And that's very similar to the way this mobile home is laid out. So in the event that someone breaks in, and actually there's a back door that comes in between the dining room and the master bedroom, which is kind of like in front of the bathroom, so that the doors are offset. But in either entry point, you get someone coming in. If you're in the master bedroom and your kids are in the second bedroom, you've got a really serious problem, because the bad guy is dead center. Any shots that you take on him, or anything that you do to stop the threat, if it involves a projectile or anything like that, there's potential for it missing the bad guy, or punching through the bad guy and winding up in the children's bedroom. And the interesting thing with this is Ron goes back and forth in this blog post about how it's really difficult to protect yourself in this situation if you have children. And, you know, perhaps in this situation, a firearm is not the best option. And as much as I would like to disagree with him, I can't. It's just a really bad scenario if someone comes in and you've got kids. It's tough, but really interesting stuff. Head over to When the Balloon Goes Up. I'll include a link to this article in the show notes, as I do with everything. And check out the post and drop your 2 cents into the comment section. The second piece of featured content comes from Everyday No Days Off. And you know, we've all heard the rumors or the grumblings of the microstamping crowd. You know, if we just put a little engraving into the firing pin of every gun, you know, all crimes would magically be solved, because any spent casings that are ejected out of the gun would have, you know, the make, model, serial number, all that information stamped onto the primer, and you know, it's just a matter of picking these things up and going and arresting people, and eventually all crime would drop off and be solved, and yada yada yada. You know, unless, I don't know, maybe someone grabbed the file and just sort of distorted or takes off that little, you know, raised or embossed stamp on the end of that firing pin, you know, whatever the case may be, and eliminates that issue, or if they go about it in the way that's in this post, which is pretty interesting. So here we have a guy that has an AR-15, and he decides he's going to make his own firing pin out of a nail. I think they're called scaffold nails or duplex nails or something like that. They're a fairly heavy nail, but they have 2 heads on them. There's a typical head at the end, and then inset a little ways is a second ring. And he took this nail and modified it a bit and put it in his AR-15 and started firing. And it worked. It seemed to work without issue at all. Basically, he just took the nail, and then he used a bench grinder to rough the nail into size, and then he put it into a lathe and filed final dimensions on it, popped it in his AR, and was firing rounds without issue. You know, slow firing rounds without issue, firing rounds quickly without issue. It seemed to work just as well as the standard firing pin, and I think he said that in the end it cost him about 2 cents and a little bit of his time. Not something that I don't think I would give it a shot. It's kind of involved in the sense that you need a lathe. I guess you could do it without one if you really wanted to, but it just goes to show you that a little bit of ingenuity is going to beat out any micro stamping issues that if we ever face one. You know, at 2 cents a firing pin and a little bit of time, you know, it completely circumvents that whole micro stamping cause that you've got anti-gunners cheering for in certain states. So definitely well worth the, I don't know what it is, 3-4 minutes or something like that video. So head over to Everyday No Days Off and check out M16 nail firing pin. For this week's cigar and drink pairing, we have a double repeat, more or less. The cigar is the Ortega Serie D. I've talked about this, I think, twice in the past. This is the number 7. I think I've talked about the number 8 and the number 10. And I just happen to have a number 7 lying around that fit the time constraints of this morning, so that's what I lit up for the cigar and drink pairing of the episode. These are medium to full-bodied cigars. They have a really nice rich Maduro flavor. They go great with coffee, and the prices are pretty reasonable. Off the top of my head, I can't think of what they are. Number 7 goes for about $35 a 5-pack, $60 for a 10-pack, or $116.95 for a box of 20. So all in all, I think these are a really solid cigar for the money, really good flavor, fair price, and I'd most definitely recommend them. Earlier this week, I saw a tweet from Buckhead Cigar. Actually, yesterday I saw this tweet saying that this week's special was 10% off anything on the website. So this is being recorded on the 14th, so the weekend of July 14th, 2012. It looks like everything on AskTheCigarGuys.com is 10% off for the week's special. So if you're interested in trying this cigar, which is on the list, I would suggest purchasing from my preferred retailer, which is Mike over at Buckhead Cigar in Atlanta, Georgia. You can give him a call at 404-844-0400 and place your order, find out what he's got, you know, whatever the case may be. If you're interested in seeing that list of items that have 10% applied to them, or 10% off applied to them, head over to www.askthecigarguys.com. Again, it's not a retail site. It is just a listing of some of the newer product and featured product that Mike has. And again, as of yesterday, this week's special is 10% off while supplies last. Everything on that list. So give Mike a call. Hit him up on social media. He's on Twitter as Buckhead Cigar. He is on Facebook and Google Plus as Buckhead Cigar. Find out what you want. Place your order. Tell him Walt sent you. You know, all that happy stuff. And you know, enjoy your cigars. The drink pairing of this whole portion of the podcast is Second Amendment coffee. I talked about it last week. I'm still kind of fighting with my Keurig. And this morning when I pulled the machine apart, or I say pull the machine apart, it's actually just a little insert. But the My K-Cup insert thing that I bought, I pulled it apart between cups. Again, just like last week, I'm drinking out of a travel mug, and it requires 2 fills out of the Keurig to fill it up. So what I do is I make the K-Cup, I put it in the machine, I run it on large cup, and it doesn't work right. I don't know whether the coffee's too fine, or if the filter is too fine. I'm leaning towards the filter may be too fine. But all of the coffee is being pushed to the outside of the K-Cup, and then the middle is just sort of filling up with water and overflowing. And it's causing a real issue. It's making the coffee a little bit weak. It gets a little bit of coffee grounds on my coffee, and it's just, this whole ordeal is kind of frustrating. But this morning, in between cups, I pulled the My K-Cup apart and looked at it, and the whole center was filled up with water. So the filter is definitely being clogged. I don't know whether it's the coffee being too tightly packed against the little filter, or if the filter is just, it has too fine of a mesh, and that's the issue. But whatever the case is, I'm still struggling with getting a decent cup of Second Amendment coffee into my coffee cup. I really am enjoying it, but I would like it without miscellaneous coffee grounds, and I would like it a little bit bolder, and I'm still struggling to make it bolder based on my issues with the Keurig machine. But that is the cigar and drink pairing for the episode. For the first time in I don't know how long, I'm actually ahead of schedule, and this is great. So instead of sort of rushing through the rest of the podcast to make sure that I'm under the time constraints of the podcast itself, and I'm getting out of the basement early enough so that my wife can go to work and be on time, I've got a little bit of free range here, and I'm planning on using up as much of that time as I can. So before I discuss the discussion portion of the podcast, which I actually just decided on, I want to thank two individuals. I got an email from Miguel and Spence on beating the heat. Apparently there are some people that are concerned about my well-being and being out in 109-degree temperatures and shooting that match at Lower Providence earlier this month, and I really appreciated that. Both of the emails were great. They had tips on how to remain comfortable in that sort of heat, how to stay cool, how to stay hydrated, and Miguel even went as far as explaining how to treat heat exhaustion or heat stroke, and suggested that I bring a cooler along with a couple of bags to fill with ice to put under the victims, or I guess they would be the victims of heat stroke or heat exhaustion, to put them under the armpits. I think he said one behind the neck and one on the abdomen, before calling emergency services in the event that someone kind of blacks out and falls down. But it was information to add to my toolbox, which I didn't have before. And last 2 weeks ago or whatever it was the first time that I ever had to shoot in those sorts of temperatures, and it's good to have that information in that mental toolbox, so that in the event that anything happens, I know what the signs are. Even sort of looking at myself, I know I can determine what symptoms I have and take the appropriate action, or if someone sort of falls down or gets really shaky or whatnot, I know what to look for. So all in all, fantastic emails, guys. I really appreciate both of them, and again, just really appreciate it. I also got another email from Rob with some logo ideas, which I really appreciated. A couple of weeks back, I mentioned that I'm in need of a Shooting the Breeze podcast logo to put on iTunes and things like that, and Rob sent a couple my way. There were some aspects I liked, some aspects I didn't like, but I really appreciate the time it took to put those three logos together, and they look good. Now for the actual meat and potatoes discussion portion of the podcast, which may bore some of you, but others, you may find this kind of interesting. But there's been some drama going on as of late. Excuse me. Over the past, 4 months, I've been helping out at the Southern Chester County Sportsmen's and Farmers Association. I shoot USPSA there once a month, third Saturday every month, and my volunteer time is made up of helping with stage design for one particular stage, whether or not either I'm designing a stage for that particular pistol pit, or I'm looking over a design submitted by someone else and we're sort of collaborating on it as a team. So there's a little bit of time prior to the match where I'm looking at stage designs or creating stage designs, something like that. And then the day of the match, I'm going out and I'm actually helping with setup. So we get to the range at about 8. I believe first shot is around 11. I don't know, between 10 and 11, sometime like that. So in that 2 to 3 hour time span, I'm generally helping with setup. Some of the stages that we've been doing require a fair amount of troubleshooting, so the setup has run long, but it's a lot of fun, even though it is a fairly substantial time investment. Well, imagine going through that and multiply that times 7 stages, plus all the other miscellaneous stuff that goes along with USPSA, scorekeeping, setup, teardown, all the miscellaneous stuff that goes into running a match, and you get one overworked match director who decided that it was in his best interest to resign. And I don't fault him for it. He's been running a fantastic match. Southern Chester has become one of my absolute favorite places to shoot USPSA. They do a nice mix of everything. They've got longer field courses that take a little bit of finesse, and then they've got those really short, condensed, fast-paced speed shoots, which are a lot of fun, for new and veteran shooters alike. It's just a lot of fun. And after he resigned, he sent an email out to everyone saying that Southern Chester was going to be suspending all of their matches because he wasn't going to be the match director. He was under too much stress, and he felt it was in his best interest to resign. So, I kind of got bummed out. I've only got 2 clubs in the area to shoot USPSA, and now I've only got 1. So about 7.5 hours later, I get an email from someone else at the club. No, there's matches are still on. That's not the case. We're shooting this Saturday, and we're shooting every other month. Don't worry about it. Just show up and shoot. So now I'm in a position where I have no idea what's going on. I was talking with, all of the conversation was between, us as the 50-yard crew and the match director. Now the match director's gone and no one really knows what's going on. So I'm going to show up early to help with setup and just sort of wing it, go from there. But when the match director resigned and I thought I was only able to shoot 1 match a month at this point, I started expanding my view and looking at other things to do with my free time, or with that free weekend that I would have. And I started looking at IDPA. Now, I've been wanting to start getting into IDPA for a little while now. However, the big drawback has always been I'm shooting 2 matches a month. I'm shooting between 200 and 250 rounds per match, plus, $20 for a match fee. So, it gets kind of substantial because I'm not reloading yet. I'm getting closer. I'm just not there yet. And I didn't think that I could throw a 3rd match into the mix without getting into reloading. So when all of a sudden one of those matches kind of fell off the radar, I decided, okay, it's time to get into IDPA. So I started looking around, and I found a large number of clubs in the area that do IDPA. It's incredible how many IDPA clubs there are to every one USPSA club. I would bet that the numbers are probably pretty close to 4 IDPA clubs to every 1 USPSA club. And clubs are a little bit closer than USPSA. They range from about 30 minutes away up to about an hour and a half, is as far as I'm willing to drive. And in that radius, there are a lot of clubs. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get in IDPA. I'm going to give it a try. But the issue became, how do I do this? I don't know the first thing about IDPA. I know that there are a lot of rule variations between IDPA and USPSA. I've been shooting USPSA long enough that I've got techniques ingrained into my mind. I go into a target array, I engage the array, and I reload most of the time. One of the things that they say about USPSA is if you're not shooting, you're reloading. So the first thing you do is you hit the magazine release button, the magazine hits the ground, and you're off running. Well, in IDPA, there's retention. You can't dump a magazine unless it's empty, and 9 times out of 10, when I dump a magazine, there are rounds in it. There's at least 1 round in it. Generally, there is anywhere between 1 and 4 rounds in that magazine, and that's a big penalty in IDPA. Every time I do that, I'd be getting a procedural. So my concern is, how do I keep myself from getting killed with procedurals, because this is what I've learned in USPSA. So that was a bit of a concern. My other concern was learning tactical sequence and tactical priority. I think those are the 2 terms for engaging targets near to far, or engaging targets near to far with 1 round before they all get a 2nd round. It's kind of confusing. I mean, everything is laid out for you. It's not so much. It's not the freestyle game that USPSA is. So there's definitely some things that I'm going to have to learn or get used to shooting both sports, because I'm going to continue shooting USPSA. I'm just going to be folding in IDPA into the mix. So as of last week, or this weekend, there was 1 USPSA match on my calendar and 1 potential IDPA match. Now there are 2, we're back to 2 USPSA matches, but I'm still going to mix in a 3rd match, 1 IDPA match. So that led to, okay, how do I shoot it with my gear? My USPSA setup is a Phobos Evolution holster, which is outside the waistband, paddle style, and a Glock 17. On the magazine front, I started carrying 3 double magazine pouches. They're Blade Tech model. I don't remember what the model is, but they have this tech lock system so that they're not paddle style, they hook onto the belt. And with IDPA, obviously I only need one, but that's kind of bulky. The gun itself is fairly large, although a lot of people shoot Glock 34s, so as long as I can cover it, it's not an issue. But I'm not a button-down shirt or vest kind of guy, so I'm not quite sure how that's all going to work. I'm actually considering going with an inside the waistband holster setup and just wearing a t-shirt like I normally do, or a polo, and just sort of draping it over the gun and the magazine carriers and shooting that way. But it also brought to my mind, do I want to shoot the Glock 17? You know, I want to use, I don't want to game IDPA sort of like I do USPSA. I want to use it for practice with my carry gun, and I don't want to take my current carry gun because it's 40 Smith & Wesson, and I don't want to have to incur that kind of cost. So I put an order in for a Generation 4 Glock 19. I'm really happy with the 17. The 19 should carry a little easier, and I should be able to use it for IDPA as well. So I'm waiting on the Glock 19 to come in. When it does, I'm in the process of looking for a holster, and I've been posting stuff on my blog, just sort of holster options. So far I've looked at Concealment Solutions, which looks really good. It's amazing how many recommendations I've got for Concealment Solutions holsters. I did have a couple of concerns, but I can't think of what they are off the top of my head. I'm not sure what the turnaround time is on a typical holster, and there weren't any magazine pouches offered, and I was considering sort of a matching set. If I go with an inside the waistband holster for the 19, I'm thinking about getting an inside the waistband double magazine pouch for the magazines that go along with it, and there weren't any listed. I know I've heard the Gun Dudes or the Road Gunner talk about magazine pouches offered by Concealment Solutions. They must have been prototypes or something, so I'm not quite sure whether that would be a special order or how the pricing on that would work. I also looked at Tice holsters. The really appealing thing about Tice holsters is that pesky combat cut that everyone charges extra for appears to be incorporated into the design of the holster, so you're not paying a $10 upcharge or whatever it is to remove that little bit of leather that really aggravates me on the crossbreed. What happens is every time I go to draw the gun, my thumb gets pinched between the leather and the grip of the gun, and I get like a little bit of a brush burn every time I try to draw quickly, because my skin will hit that leather and drag across it, and I'll wind up with a little bit of dye on my knuckle from the holster and a sore knuckle in no time at all. So I'm really looking for that combat cut. That's one of the downsides of Concealment Solutions. It's an upcharge to get that. So Tice Holsters has it incorporated. His lead time, I think, is between 2 and 3 weeks for ordered holsters. I don't mind it so much because he's very upfront about it. On his website, he explains that at the current time there's a 2 to 3 week lead time, and he's not willing to compromise quality, so you kind of have to deal with it, and I'm completely okay with that. Actually, I really appreciate him being upfront and saying that, you know, I'm not going to compromise quality, so, you know, you're going to have to wait a little bit. I like that. I appreciate it. The other holsters I'm looking at, I was recommended Dragon Leatherworks. They look very beautiful holsters. However, their inside the waistband holster is tremendously ugly. They call it the fugly holster, and it is every sense of the word. The biggest downfall there is that lead time is 12 weeks, and there's just no way that I'm willing to wait 12 weeks for a holster. So they're kind of out of the running based on how busy they are in general. I don't want to wait 12 weeks for a holster. The one that I was actually most excited about, and still am excited about, is Michael's Custom Holsters from theholstersite.com. He has a couple of base model holsters, and then he does custom stuff as well. I really like what I've seen. The holsters look awesome. You know, there are a lot of design ideas that you can go with if you want a custom model. I'm leaning more towards what I think he calls the Executive 2, which is, it looks very similar to your typical hybrid holster, where it has a leather backer and a Kydex front, and the gun is sort of sandwiched between the two, except for his is leather front and back. It also has the same tuckable clips. So I'm really drawn to that holster. I like the way it looks. The really cool thing about this is it looks like you can get different color stitching, so you can have one color leather and then accent stitching. It's inside my pants, no one will ever see it, but it still looks awesome anyway. The only downside is the website is horrible. It's really difficult to find information. The website is somewhat new. I remember seeing the old website. You know, it had its problems. However, it looks like they took all of that information and applied it to a new design. And when the sidebar, when you're reading information about the holster and they recommend, you know, looking at the sidebar for additional information, there is no sidebar. In addition to that, everything is sort of transparent and there's a big logo in the back. So depending on where you are as you're scrolling, things disappear in the logo, and it's difficult to read and kind of frustrating the way the menus could sort of layer on top of one another and how that holster interacts, or how the logo interacts with the whole thing. Even so, I'm still really excited about it. I have no idea what pricing is. I have no idea what lead time is. I contacted them last week through their Google Docs contact form. I haven't heard anything back yet, so not to be a pest, but I sent another email as of last night requesting more information, again explaining my situation, and I'm really excited about Michael's Custom Holsters. I hope I hear back. I hope everything works out in terms of price and lead time, because I really want a holster that's going to be able to serve a dual purpose, day-to-day carry plus IDPA usage. My only requirements at this point are excuse me, the holster cannot under any circumstance collapse on itself when the gun is removed. The issue there becomes when the gun is out and I start engaging targets in IDPA and the all clear, you know, reholster command is given. If the holster is collapsed on itself, one of two things are going to happen. Either, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but the instinct tells you, okay, sort of turn the gun and sort of wedge it in there and pry the holster back open and then push the gun down. Well, if you do that, you're pointing the gun at yourself, which is unsafe to begin with. But it's also a match disqualification. So I can't be twisting the gun. It's got to go straight on in. If it does collapse, I'm going to have to use my support hand, my weak hand, to open the holster back up and holster the gun. The issue there becomes it's really easy to sweep your hand if it's holding the mouth of the holster open. So I can't have the holster open. That's one of the benefits of going with the hybrid style. The Kydex will keep the pants away from the leather backer, and I'll be able to reholster the gun. However, one of the really nice things about the Concealment Solutions holster is the Kydex comes up really high, so it's almost flush with the top of the gun. It's almost flush with the butt of the gun that's sticking out of the holster. So my pants should not collapse the holster. In my crossbreed, the Kydex is kind of low, and I get a little bit of a rolling action going over my pants because of how low I seat the holster. The ride height I keep is very low, and it becomes a bit of an issue. It's not a whole lot of material that rolls over, but I have to push the gun in and sort of lift it back out a little bit to get my pants to kind of, that little bit of a lip to roll back out of the holster, and then I can reholster without issue. It doesn't take two hands. I don't have to kind of finagle the gun and twist it or anything, but I do have to insert it part way, draw it part way, and then reholster it, and you know, everything is clear. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've got a Glock 19 on order. I'm weighing holster options. I didn't mention any of the bigger brands because I don't want to go with a mass-produced big brand holster. I like dealing with mom and pop shops. I don't always like the price of dealing with mom and pop shops, but I like the idea of knowing that when something is being made for me, I'm in mind. It's not so much, okay, you've got some guy making a random holster for some random individual. There's no interaction. There's no thought going into the holster for the end user. And when I'm dealing with a smaller company, I get that interaction, and they have me in mind when they're building the holster. So hopefully everything will work out. I can go with a smaller brand of holster, and then the price works out. I really can't afford to be going crazy on the cost of a holster and potentially a matching magazine pouch, but at this point, I'm price shopping. Any suggestions that you may have, I'd really appreciate them. You can send them to me in a variety of ways. I'll get to that in a minute when I do the closeout. But I think that's going to wrap up. Oh, wow, 20 minutes. I definitely went over my time limit here. But at any rate, that's going to close out the discussion topic of the episode. Well, it is time to close out the podcast so I can let you be on your way. But before I do so, I want to thank you for downloading, listening, subscribing, watching episode 48 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. If I've said something that's interested you or angered you or whatever the case may be, you can contact me in a variety of ways. The easiest of which is to head over to WaltInPA.com and click on the contact link. That will open up a page with basically all of my contact information on it. You can send me an email direct from that page with a contact form. You can access my social media sites through there, Twitter, Facebook, Google+. And if you're interested in if you want to send me an email through your own email client, you can do so at waltinpa.com. I'm also on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum under, I have a Shooting the Breeze subsection where I post a new topic for every episode, so please feel free to comment there as well. You can also comment on the show notes page on Walt NPA for each podcast. You can comment on the YouTube page for each podcast. And I'll do my best to get to respond to your comments and sort of jump into the conversation. I have a difficulty with YouTube, however, I promise to make an effort to start responding more there. I think that's going to cover it. The Gun Rights Radio Network is still in need of donations. If you've got a couple of bucks, I think it's $2 a month or $24 a year to subscribe to the Gun Rights Radio Network. It will help keep the lights on, keeps the servers running, things like that. And I think that's going to do it. Don't forget about the contest for a signed copy of Shoot Your Guide to Shooting in Competition by Julie Golub. You can find information there at waltinpa.com. Just wait for the big giant Shoot logo to appear at the top. Click on it and all of the information will pop up on the screen. So again, thanks for checking out Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. And until next week, till next time next week, stay safe and take it easy.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.